and policy.
We have lost her.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think today is here also it's very erratic because of the rains. It comes and goes. So I have kept my mobile also ready.
Okay, so ma'am, we can start with your remarks.
Yes, yes, yeah. So we can, should I start? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, so today we are on day 3 of the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center's course on ending gender-based violence, Cohort 3, with the thematic focus on challenges and responses. First of all, I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Ms. Priyanka Negi, Ms. Vaishali Singh, Mr. Satyam Tripathi, and Ms. Tuti. And today's moderator, if she can join us, very good, Ms. Avi Sharma. I also welcome Ms. Yagna Parmar and Dr. Indira Chakravarty, today's experts, who are going to share their research as well as the action with us. Brief recap of what all has happened in day 2 and day 1 and day 2. I began with the providing overview of contribution of women's movement in building campaigns against gender-based violence and interventions to provide institutional support to victim and survivor of gender-based violence, and enactment of series of laws to address gender-based violence, and also stated the shared the whole rape culture prevailing in our society, which has created existential crisis for women, girls, and gender minorities. And today, whole of India is shaken. All sensitive, decent human beings are shaken, and we need to join hands. Both state and non-state actors have to join hands to fight against it. Keynote address by Advocate Flavia Agnes was very, very touching, both head and heart. And she also profiled the efforts of women's movement since 1980 of collectively confronting violence in public and private realm. She especially focused on sexual violence, domestic violence, dowry murders, the formation of DV Act and its implementation, and how this act provides civil and preventive remedies. And she also talked about the painful and tiring and tearing court procedures, and the struggle against another campaign she took up was a struggle against sex-selective abortion. She spoke about Pamri Devi's gang rape and Vishaka Directive and formation of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act, functioning of the internal committees, a question of local complaints committee, which are operating at district level. Mostly they are non-functioning, women can't reach there. Then she also talked about some of the laws which came as a result of proactive approach of the women's rights movement. And she gave an example of prevention of sati and the glorification of Sati Act after the Devrala episode in 1987. She concluded with a powerful message that it is our duty to give support and hope to survivors through our actions collectively and individually. Day 2 began with a very powerful presentation by Dr. Keerthi. She spoke with passion and commitment, and she started her presentation with an affirmation that we should be able to raise our voice against gender-based violence, and women's movement against gender-based violence is the second freedom struggle. That's what she emphasized, that it is the second freedom struggle for dignity, respect, freedom of women, children, and sexual minorities from the gender-based violence. She started with the giving story of Gulabi gang, in which women wearing pink saris responded collectively against beating, torture, and murder of in their matrimonial homes. She asked, why do we need women's collective? And she herself answered that to fight for human rights, to build solidarity, to address inequalities. She narrated practical work of despite being her mother being in a public life, she had to face tremendous domestic violence, and she could not come out because of the social stigma at it. And she took time to come out of violent situation, and now she's supporting thousands of survivors of gender-based violence. The film she showed was also very, very energizing and inspiring. So she expressed that stand-alone services are not enough. There must be comprehensive approach to take care of socio-cultural, economic, and political aspects of women's survival struggle. So it is not only just quote unquote rescuing women from the violent situation, but after that, what will they do? How will they survive? So their employment, their food security, and even the organization like Majlis, they also give a ration kit, and they also give a child's kit, because women who are spending 8 to 10 hours in the police for writing FIR or a whole day in the court, the children want, when these women are thrown out with children and they need water and they need food and they need milk and they need toys. So everything, the kit is also given, and lifelong commitment and attachment with the survivor is very important. And she ended her powerful presentation with that no silence for violence. The second presentation by Dr. Albertina Almeida, it was a very well documented and data driven presentation on sexual harassment at workplace, challenges and responses, and it was historically rooted in women's rights movement. She walked the participants through history of laws against sexual harassment. She stressed that sexual harassment is not an act of lust. She emphasized it again and again. It is a crime of power, which is exercised to teach the victim a lesson. She showed that looking at varied work situations, the definition of workplace needs to be expanded, and I think now that is being taken care of. While analyzing Bhavri Devi gang rape case, she exposed the dual response of casteist mindset that valorizes untouchability and also going hand in hand with the sexual violence of untouchable women, which is a very, very intimate act. She provided nuanced understanding of Bhavri Devi case in 1992, Rupan Dev Bajaj episode where she was harassed by DGP in 1997, and the Nirbhaya tragedy in 2012. She applauded Justice Verma Committee's report 2013 that resulted in sexual harassment of Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act, which is now also under Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. She stated that sexual harassment crosses the boundary of decency and hurts women's bodily autonomy. When due processes under POSH Act did not address complaints, Me Too movement happened. She informed about definition of sexual harassment, bodily autonomy, privacy, consent, employer-employee relationship in Section 3 of the Act. And she also elicited and she also gave the details of responsibility of the employers to provide safe space and the need for orientation and sensitization program, installation of 6 she box that has been installed by National Commission for Women and Ministry of Women and Child Development, more knowledge and awareness about it. She also gave the nuanced understanding of the inquiry processes, principle of natural justice, interim relief, time frame within which, like 90 days, you have to, first of all, within 10 days of receiving complaint, you need to institute a internal committee and the hearing, and within 90 days, you have to give your recommendations to the highest authority in your establishment, in your enterprise. So she also talked about the Justice Hema Committee report, and she also said that why victims take so long to testify. At least in Justice Hema Committee report, all these actresses of Kerala film industry, they immediately alerted the appropriate authorities, but still, even after the inquiry commission report was ready in 2017, it took nearly 7 years to come out in open, and that too in the violence. In the conclusion, like we all realize that it is so important for all of us in our country, and also uh, as a conscious citizen, we have to stick out our neck. Today, we welcome Ms. Yagna Parmar, who is going to enlighten us about empowering adolescent voices, pathways of addressing systemic and structural violence, which is the initial who will enlighten the campaign against pre-birth elimination of girls, which is based on the very interesting exercise she did was a witness seminar where all those who were directly involved in the campaign gave their testimony of how they built the whole process of identifying the issue, doing the research, providing evidences, approaching the state, and coming up with the first state laws and then the laws for the nation, all India jurisdiction. Thank you very much, Avi. Yeah. Hello, IMPRI team, please take it ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the overview.
Okay, now yeah. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the overview of the past few days of the program. Moving forward, I would like to invite our first speaker for the session, Ms. Yagna Parmar ji, Director of Vacha Resource Center for Girls at Vacha Charitable Trust. She will present her talk on empowering adolescent voices, pathways to address systematic and structural violence initiative of Vacha. Welcome, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Very good evening to all, and thank you, IMPRI team and Dr. Vibhuti Patel, for inviting me to be one of the speakers at this cohort on ending gender-based violence. This topic is really very, very close to my heart and have been working on this issue for more than 15 years. And it's my pleasure to be associated with Vacha, where I started my journey as a center, the community organizer, and then now leading programs in the organization. Just to start with, Vacha is a Mumbai-based feminist organization. It's led by a group of women. Started very, very long back in 1990 during the time of women's movement. So hence our principles, our values are all based on the right ways approach, and that is what governs our all the programs with women and girls. So like Vacha actually started working with women and as a women's library and a kind of and cultural resource center. An idea was to create a space for women to come together, create a kind of a safe space where women can come together, discuss, have an intellectual discussion, read, make peers. So the kind of a culture which is usually women are not allowed to get into it. And at the same time, there have been cases of domestic violence coming up, and Vacha was dealing with those issues. And while working on those issues, what at the team, the Vacha realized that it was very difficult for women to get out of the violence. It was very difficult for them to accept that for the kind of violence they are facing, they need to question it, they need to raise voice against it. And hence Vacha had thought of revising its own strategy and move to the more of a preventive work. So I would request to go on the next slide. I will not talk much about the gender-based violence like Vibhuti Ben said. Already you have gone to learn about what is gender-based violence, and it's about the context and the intensity of violence in your previous sessions. But just to connect it with our works, the idea was, I mean, there has always been a fight about that women rights are also human rights. There have never been, women rights were never considered as any human rights, or women are never considered as any human. So we have been fighting for that cause for many years, and it's as we all know that gender-based violence is mainly the manifestation of the violation of basic human rights of equality, of constitutional rights of equality, and that comes in a various forms. And the age group which we are working with, it comes in terms of a threat, in terms of restriction on mobility, on their sexuality, on their productivity. That this kind of violence is much more visible in the group with whom we are working with working with. And in Vacha, what we are emphasizing more on, like on natal violence, what we call it, the violence which girls are experiencing in their own homes, by their own family member, by their parents, by their siblings, by their relatives. So that although there has been a cases of domestic violence, but Vacha's work has been more of addressing a natal violence. So that's been our experience. These are some of the data where we see that the kind of physical and sexual violence experienced by faced by women, and how the percentage have always been increasing. And the child marriage is also one of the other form of extreme form of violence, and we have been also dealing with that issues in our work. Yes, next slide, please. So now, question is, why adolescents? Like in 1995, Vacha decided to move the shift its focus from women to girls, because what we believe is that this is the adolescence is a phase where this group is facing the additional burden of vulnerability in terms of age also. So girls, the adolescents are anyway facing the threats or vulnerability of caste, class, or religion minority, linguistic minority, regional minority, and in that girls faces additional burden of gender vulnerabilities. Where in adolescence the age also gets into that. The age factor also adds to the vulnerability. And in India, if in Indian context, if we see, we have always seen that girlhood is always considered as a phase for preparation of a wifehood or a mother. There is whereas this is a phase where the girls have immense potential, girls and boys both, but the girls usually have a very less opportunity. So there is always a restrictions, because of the restrictions on their opportunity, restriction on their mobility, restriction on their productivity. They hardly get any access to the kind of the education or the going out or learning about other resources in the community. So their potentials are hardly tapped about, are never been taken into considerations. They've always been put behind the doors. So like in how we see that how adolescence is experienced very differently by girls and boys in our Indian context. Where when girls enter into this stage, they've been always asked to keep quiet, stay at home, wear a particular kind of clothes, not to speak loudly. Whereas the boys have been always going out, be more masculine, more involved, asking him to involve more into decision making power. So that entire the gender roles are defined and becomes very crucial at this particular age. And hence Vacha thought, if we start making intervention if at this particular age, and in that also at the age of 10, that is our unique strategy. Because even if we say many of the government schemes, and I'm talking about 95-96, when Vacha started working with adolescents, most of the adolescents program was starting after 13 or 14 years of age. So there was an age group about 10 to 13, which are like call it a pre-adolescence or an early adolescence. And what we felt that if we need to start from that stage, because that is where the girls start having suddenly having a different kind of lifestyles, and we wanted to break that cultural uh, that cultural stereotypical roles for girls and boys both. And hence we started our programs majorly focus on adolescents, and then they grow with us and they become productive citizens going forward. So this is what here we see that if we consider the current context of violence, what we see there is, and in our work with adolescents, what we have realized that there is always a certain things, certain gaps which needs to be filled in. That is neither been covered by the education system, neither been covered by the family, neither been covered by the state, or even if it is covered by them, it's in a very surface level and not it doesn't go deep into it, and again it reinforces the patriarchal stereotypical roles. So like some of these are, like you can see, is how patriarchy and gender discriminations socializes girls and boys both. How girls are always being asked to be docile and not to speak and not to get into any kind of intellectual discussions. and even the boys been always been encouraged for a kind of a toxic masculinity. And these are some of these factors usually. Yeah, so these are the key factors that perpetuate the cycle of violence and subjugation for girls and women, and also poses a threat to the realization of human rights by girls and women in our country. Even if we consider the existing laws and policies, there we have always seen that implementation has been inadequate, does not have any provision for follow-up. The processes are mostly time-consuming and cumbersome, inadequate, or uh, does not provide and also do not have a relevant staff working on the women's violence issues. There is a so hence whenever the adolescents or a women goes to the system for asking for a help, and the kind of response they receive, it's very discouraging from the system, and which prevents them from accessing any kind of helps from the system. Next slide, please. So this is our model of empowerment to address this kind of discrimination and inequality and kind of various gender inequalities and social inequalities. Our model of empowerment is mostly based on the preventive work. So that idea is that if we work with this age group, they will become a productive citizens, productive and informed citizens going forward in the future. They will become a informed women where they will have a higher chance of decision making. They will be in a position to make decisions more constructively and logically, and they will be able to take their own decisions rather than someone else was taking the decision on their behalf. So our first thing is a very critical part of our model of empowerment is participatory learning. We do not believe in on behalfism. Vacha's slogan is nothing for girls without girls. So our idea is if we want to address the issue of violence of girls and women, we need to involve them into the planning. So it is a kind of approach. It's not only the girl-centered approach, but it is also a girls-led approach, where the programs are also designed in such a way that the kind of once they acquire kind of skills and information, they themselves decide where they would like to have a classes. They themselves decide about the what kind of language they would like to have a session in or the training in. They themselves decide about the kind of song, the kind of activity they would like to do. So they have a say in the program designing and program right from the program designing part. At the same time, whenever they decide to take any issues to address in their own community, they are completely part of that entire process, identification and prioritizations and selection of process and program implementations. So it's not only at the implementation part, but from the designing part. Hence, for us, the participatory method is extremely important and it has worked well. So we have seen more of a ownership of the program about the girls and boys. Second one is the non-formal education. So ours is a very long, our model is a very long, works for a very long durations. Like our the girls and boys enroll in our programs at the age of 10 when they are in class 5th or so, and then they continue till they complete graduations. Of course there is, but it's still not as like a rigid school or a college structure. They continue for 10 years, but in a various capacities. Like for till 9th, 8th, 9th standard, their participation is very intensive. They come 3 to 4 times a week in a 3 to 4 times a week. When they get into the 9th or 10th classes, their participation reduced to 2 days, and then later 1 day a week. But they are remain connected with it. Our modules are designed in such a way that they are continuously connected with Vacha's program. They also have a choice that even if they drop out in between of the program, they can come back to the program. They get the similar kind of welcome to our program. So in that sense, we would say it's a non-formal education, non-formal method where the methods are very interesting, very nuanced, innovative, and based on their own languages, because we work in Mumbai areas. Our major work is in Mumbai and Thane districts. Across Mumbai, we work mainly in Mumbai suburbs. And then in Thane district, if we consider the Dombivli, Kalyan, Ambernath area. So there is a Mumbai is a city where there is a multicultural city where different languages are spoken by the group. So we also look into all those aspects and try to bring our module in such a way that it is appealing to all kind of groups. Either they are, whether they are from the migrant community or from the Maharashtra itself. But then the program is receptive to all kind of participants. So that care has been taken by us. The third important thing is, like I already said, is we make intervention at an early age. And we have seen that when we have started making intervention at the age of 10, 11, the sustainability of our program, the impact of our work is much more productive, much more impactful, and it has been sustained. We have seen impact in a various form, which I will talk about it little later in the presentation. The third one is 21st century life skills. So our after school program, our empowerment module emphasize on 21st century life skill. So it's a combination of Paulo Freire Gandhian ideology, where there are discipline is important, timely punctuality is important, but and of course doing things by themselves is important, but at the same time also talking about violence and questioning violence, questioning inequalities. That's been very important part of our life skills. In looking at the age group and the current needs of the participants, our 21st century life skill includes learning English, learning computers, map reading, dictionary reading, the kind of skills which we may feel can be a very basics for the middle class and upper middle class people, but for this group who are coming mostly migrated from the UP, Bihar or Karnataka, from Hyderabad, Gulbarga. For them, these are very alienating skills. And for them, this when we start having this kind of programs, they feel equipped to deal with their school syllabus also, and are able to cope with their school culture also. So those are very important skills. With that, we also emphasize on bodily rights, understanding their own body, menstrual health and hygiene issues, the nutritional issues, and their body, their own, they have their own rights over the body. It's sexual health. Also, we also talk about the community resources, the community awareness, what kind of community they live in, what are the resources available, which are the stakeholders who are accountable for providing certain kind of services to the people. So making them aware about our resources and services, even include and connecting them with the government schemes also. That's been a part of our 21st century life skills. And the last point is long-term engagement. Our model includes a long-term engagement with adolescents, girls, young women in the community, like I said, till they complete graduation, so which helps them to delay their age of marriage and complete their higher education. Next slide, please. Hello. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. It's just give me 2 seconds. It's a bit stuck.
Sure, no. So these are our key programs for through which we implement our we work with adolescents, girls and boys. The one is the Girls Resource Center that caters to the age group of 10 to 14 years, where that's where our program starts. And these resource centers are established within the community where girls themselves live. So it's not girls comes to our program. Our program goes to the girls. So that is the one we are to deal with the restriction of mobility. So that is why this within the community, where it can be a community space, it can be a Buddha Vihar, it can be a temple, or sometime if any no community space are available, then we take a place on the rental basis and we conduct a program within their own area. So they are able to access our program. So that's one thing we take into account. The second program, the youth empowerment is another. So from after age 14, girls resource center that caters to 10 to 16 years of the age group, and this group is divided into two levels, level 1 and level 2, and all the levels go through the English, computer, self-awareness and community awareness, but the intensity of the content changes as per the level wise. Like, they, for example, they are learning about ration issues. The ration is the basic food rights. So the level 1 will understand only about understanding about the ration structure, where the shops are available. But the level 2 will be going to the community, identifying the shop, what is being written on the board, whether there is a complaint book. So they will be more on the gradually the action parts increases in our module. And after 16, this group becoming part of our youth. So there we emphasize more on the action based part, and the depth of the content increases, where in the youth empowerment program they start learning about Right to Information Act, they start learning about right to education, they start learning about constitutional rights, so and also about the visiting more of our civic structures and municipal structures, where their complaints will be taken, how to write letters, how to file a complaint. So those things are even more important into the youth empowerment sections. Here they start making collectives, because how long Vacha will be there in one community? So our idea is that gradually the youth collectives are able to sustain our programs in the community. So once they get out of the complete the girls resource center program or the resource center program, they start making their own collectives. And currently out of 16 slums, there are total 10 youth collectives present in communities who are actively working on various issues like sanitation, safety, education, the right to health, and menstrual health and hygiene. These are the areas which they have themselves have identified and have bring result into their own communities. These two, Girls Resource Center and Youth Empowerment, are two of our major part of the program. The third one is Mobile Library and Resource Center, Resource Creation. Sorry. So like Vacha started as a library, Vacha as a women's library. But then when we started working with adolescents, the library component was also added for the adolescent children. Because I'm talking about the time of 95, 97, even now we see that in the school, even there is a library there, girls and boys do not get access to the library. Because sometimes what if they tear it? What if they misplace the book? Then the teachers are supposed to pay the fines to the schools, and that is why that prevents. Again, the teachers hardly give any access to the library to the school students. So, and we have a library books in 7 languages, looking at the language diversity in our programmatic area. We have in English, computers, we have a library in English, Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, Kannada, Telugu, and the Tamil, the kind of the mostly language spoken by our participants. And along with that, there is a lot of educational games are available, so that they learn through games. One of a very, very creative program is Kishori Mela, where the gender awareness are imparted through games. Like simple subsidy or snake and ladder, we see. Through snake and ladder, they will understand about why it is important to eat nutritional food, why it is important to question certain inequality, why it is important to acquire education. What if they will start fasting or they will not eat, then snake takes them down. So through simple games like snake and ladder, or like hammering a nail, which is generally considered as a boy's job, or the main person will be doing, but the girls are encouraged to do that, and the boys will be doing the stitching work. So breaking those gender stereotypes through these kind of games. And also about, we have a ring stall where various aspirations are written, like I would like to go for a world tour, I would like to have a short hair, I would like to go out with my friends, I would like to study further. So through those ring stalls, girls start talking about their own aspirations. So we have many such resources. We create just Previous slide, please. These are the games through which we try to impart our program. The third one is awareness building and networking. Vacha is part of various network like Right to Education, Right to Health. We are coordinating one important network of adolescent girls, where girls across Mumbai city associated with various organizations are making their own networks and working on civic issues and on the gender issues. They're running a campaign called Ab Nahi To Kam, the time is now. This is entirely girl-centered and girls-led campaign. And for last 10 years, we have been coordinating this campaign. It's an Empower initiative, but we have been leading that program. We are also part of Right to P campaign. And then at the same time, we become part of other policy networks also, so to help to create a larger level of impact. Research and training, definitely it's also one of the important part of our programs. We recently conducted a research on menstrual health and hygiene, perception of girls towards that. We do train, we do conduct gender trainings of NGO workers and teacher trainees, so that because teachers, we all know teachers sometimes become a gender stereotypical person, and they have a very critical role to play in child's development. Next slide, please. So this is, like I was saying, our methodology is unique in terms of it's not only focuses on skills and informations and exposure, but we also provide them opportunities to utilize, to demonstrate their acquired skills and to acquired informations also. So like, just to give you one example, they will be learning computers at one side, they will be learning PowerPoint presentations, they've been taught Unicode also, so Unicode typing also, so they are able to better present and express themselves through language. And at the same time, they may be visiting a police station. They will be learning about various procedure, how to file FIR, what is the difference between NC, where to go, where is Women and Child Development Department, where is a Child Protection Officer sit, so they can use it afterwards in their own life. So once they go to this visit, they make a PowerPoint presentation and make a presentation to the larger group in their own community. So through that, or they start filing FIR. Whenever there is needed in their community, or sometimes for their own houses, sometimes for their own mother, sometimes for their relatives. There have been cases where they have fought for, they have stopped child marriages of their own cousins and siblings. Next. These are our strategies. Like I have already spoken about why we start early, and our focus is on 10 to 19 years. We create safe spaces in community, like I said. Also in schools, we are working in government schools as well as in the private schools attended by marginalized children, because now we have seen gradually that even people living in communities have started going to the private school, which is a positive move. That's what we see. And we also have an extension interventions in colleges, with junior college and degree colleges, especially for the gender training part and for the fair, where we train them in conducting those kind of gender trainings and gender fairs, and they do these exercises with their peers. Our approach is equality through equity. So even though when we say we are working with adolescents, we primarily focus on girls. So our first program start with girls, and then boys comes free, like intensive program with girls, and then boys come into the picture. And gradually both of them join the programs, and the youth collective become a mixed youth collectives, because our idea is that the girls also develop leadership in a mixed group. But to deal with the kind of extra vulnerability which girls are facing primary resources are for girls, and our intensity, like if they come 4 days a week, the boys will come twice a week. So that's how our equality through equity approach works. And then gradually together they work on bringing change in the community. So model is empowering girls and sensitizing boys. So it is because once it is very, very important to understand that if we start empowering girls, they will start questioning at home, raising questions at home. At the same time, it is important that boys are also joins their hand in their empowerment processes. And we have seen the very positive result of it, that because they also go through a kind of a same patriarchal systems where they have been asked to become a toxic masculine person. But if the boys are trained in certain way, they have helped our girls to stop, delay their age of marriage, helped our, they start sharing household work so that their sisters can also come to our center for attend programs. So it's very small changes, but and then they themselves were joining hands with the girls to fight for violence issues. When there was a Nirbhaya case, our mixed youth group had taken out the very big rally on their own from Santa Cruz station to Juhu area, where and they're raising slogans about violence against women and solidarity with women. So the boys also start questioning these inequalities. And of course, I have already spoken about formation of youth collectives. So that helps to sustain our programs. And these are some of our areas where we have been working. Next slide. These activities, so like in the community, major 3-4 activities. One is regular, we call it after school sessions. Then there is workshops and exposure visits, and then social action in the community. These sessions are usually 90 minutes to 2 hours, and workshops are usually for 5 to 6 hours. And our strategy is we work on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, because that's somewhere we get this youth accessible, and 1 or 2 days in a week time, depending on the availability of the kids. So that is what we discuss with them, and then based on that we decide our schedule, the timing and everything. Even our staff timings are adjusted as per the participants' timing. So our job schedule is not that way very rigid schedule. We believe in flexibility so that they are able to reach out to, we are able to meet the need of our adolescents and youth. Workshops are usually in form of skill-based workshop like photography, the technical aspect. Usually girls are mostly are not allowed to use cameras. We have seen the instances when girls started going with the camera in their community, mothers or someone pulls them out in the house, and why are you not taking our boys for these skills? Why are you teaching them? They are not going to use these skills. But of course, gradually community accepts that fact. The creative expression in form of art, craft, the community newsletter is something very, very new initiative. That's been from 2009 we have been running. That's one form of advocacy tool our youth is using for community advocacy. They themselves become a part of news gathering committee news editing. They themselves type it out. They gather news. They type also. They design it also. The older one design the newspaper also, and their newspaper name is Hamari Baatein, our narratives. And they take this out newsletter twice in a year. One on 15th August of our National Independence Day, and the 26th January, the Republic Day. Both the days, because Vacha believes in freedom, rights, and independence. So that is why these 2 days are chosen for this activity. Social action, they take social action in terms of rallies, in terms of photo exhibitions, in terms of filing RTIs, in form of street theater, flash mob, or now they have started using small mobile video to advocate for their issues. So since it's a time of digital era, so they are using more of digital things. They make PowerPoint presentations also. And we have seen that these inputs have helped our adolescents in a various way. Next slide. So impact can be seen on 3-4 components. There we have seen the increased freedom and mobility especially among girls. It starts from getting out of their home, come to our center, then going to the community, then going for the residential training, and now some of them have also gone for they have traveled alone out of Mumbai city, out of Maharashtra also. So that kind of mobility we have seen, but this impact is definitely gradual. That is why we say our model is long term and require a lot of interventions connected with that. And this has helped them to get into the formal workforce. Almost, so what we have said, after they complete graduations, our girls are either going for the higher education or getting into the formal workforce. Some of There are someone who have become a doctor. There are lawyers. There are many girls have gone into the back offices. Many have gone into corporate structure. Some have become engineers also. Some have, one or two has gone into the fashion designing, interior designing. And these girls are the first generation learners and the first person, not even the boys in their family, who are going to the formal workforce. That is the kind of impact we are able to make. And the girls are themselves are able to make informed decisions about their job, about their educations, about their marriages. Many like recently 2 or 3 girls have completed their master in diploma development studies from Azim Premji University. Many have started making their own groups, youth collectives, and working on social issues. So across the spectrum, we have seen the girls getting into the livelihood things also, and also contributing to breaking the cycle of violence and the poverty also. Access to higher education, I already told, just previous slide, please. Yeah. Girls leadership in mixed group, that's if we see in most of the community, hardly there are any collectives where girls are there. Even though the collectives are mostly festival based, Navratra Mandal, Ganpati Mandal, that Mandal, but these are all festival based Mandal. But hardly any youth groups who are working on the social issues or who are working on the gender issues, definitely. But Vacha's youth groups works differently. And it also, any youth group says minimum 50% of participation of girls or even more, but cannot be less than 50%. So that's the kind of change we have seen our youth making into the community. The access to public spaces, they are accessing public ground, playground, usually usually used by a male member only, but now they are going and accessing playground. They are playing sports. They have made their mothers to play sports. Recently there is one example where girls had encouraged her mother to go for second marriage, because she said, why mother should, so if she really would like to go for a marriage, she allowed it. And I would not allowed it, but encourage her to go for it. So they are also making good changes in their life, and that's what we have seen ripple effect in terms of their siblings are also getting into this same kind of change processes. They are of course preventing early marriage and motherhood. Almost 98% of our participants have prevented their early marriages. Around 40 marriages we have actually stopped with the help of Childline and with help of other NGOs or others, the system involved in it. We partner with various we have partnered with Majlis to deal with the domestic violence issues or sexual abuse issues. We partner with the support organization to fight the issue of the drug addiction among boys and girls. So partnering is also another way of our interventions. Next slide, please. These are some of our codes. There are many, but I've just put it here, a few of them. That many of them have found our program useful in terms of getting once acquiring the skills, and also talking out. They are able to talk. They are knowing that how to put their points. These are and their own development and their own community development. That's what mostly we have seen among our participants. Next. From our learning, if I have to say, what we realize is trust building with girls is extremely important in their families. Without that, it is very, very difficult to run this kind of program, because where we are questioning the entire family structure, we are questioning the gender norms that have been running for many, many years. Process is important, where we are emphasizing whether it is participatory or kind of what routes we are taking, that is equally important as outcome. Democratic participation, definitely. Patience, there is a lot of backlash. We have to close sometimes centers. We get a backlash from the community leaders. Community leaders are very, very supportive till you teach them English, computers, and other things. But the moment the girls start questioning about early marriage or abuse or the sexual harassment or a toilet issues, they will say, you shut your centers and go out, get out of there. So we have to then again play a various strategy, and we sometimes certain things work very subtly. We do not come in the front, and that is why Vacha networks with other organizations. That is why we work with Sneha. That is why we work with Masli. That is why we work with Childline, so that we are able to work with other, we are able to continue our presence in the community for a larger cause, but at the same time also raising issues of sexual abuse and other things. Networking with, sorry for the typo, there is a repetition of the work. Like I said, stakeholders, the mothers, we work with mothers, community leaders, and civic structures, KDMC, BMC, to help the community youth to take on to bring change in their community. What we have seen that changing the higher nature of higher education are pushing girls out of the formal educations. There is various board, ICSE, CBSE board, and all the students, our students, compete with this ICSE and CBSE board who have gone through the very rigorous process during their school education. So they come with a very good marks in the class 10. But these same students are fighting for the college education. So even the aided college has a provision of very less fees, but because of the home environment and the kind of family background our participants come through, they are not really, or not all of them are able to secure the very highest marks, and then they struggle to get admission into the aided schools. So that limits their higher education part, and that's where Vacha has started a scholarship program also to help them to support their higher education. So that also one needs to question this kind of discrimination and inequalities. We have realized, I mean, we understood that engaging with peer voice is equally important if we want to work on the issue of gender equality. Thank you. And now I request at the end of the slide, you can see some of the references, some of our reports, which can be accessible, freely accessible. Some of the reports are our own reports, and some which I have utilized for my own presentation and can just be useful for this cohort. If there is a time, I can request you to show the video. It's of 6 minutes, if it is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights and expertise with us and enlightening us through the functioning of Vacha Resource Center for Girls. I now request Vibhuti ma'am to kindly give her remarks on the session. And in the meanwhile, participants can either use the raise hand feature or put their questions in the Q&A box. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, I think a very inspiring report, and especially she started with her personal journey that, right, as an adolescent girl, the kind of struggle she had, and she secured how she secured gold medal in MSW and joined Vacha as a young person, and how the organization has developed and expanded. And very important messages that we need to work with the boys. Very, very important, because we are most of the crimes, if you go by the sexual violence crimes or crimes against young girls, and this thing, they are done by the adolescent boys, and it's very important. And the kind of culture of hypermasculinity and misogyny, which they internalize throughout their socialization process, I think demands that we make conscious effort to for gender sensitization, include them. They should not feel left out, that your organization is just focusing on the girls, no? So it is very important learning from Yagna Ben's presentation. Thank you. Very inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. We'll see for the video first, and then we can move ahead for the question and answers.
जैसे कि मुझे मारने के लिए आ रहे हैं, तो मैं नीचे कूद गया और नीचे पूरा खड्डा था, तो मेरे को डायरेक्ट ऐसा लग गया यहाँ पे, बहुत दर्द दे रहा था, लेकिन मेरे को डर लग रहा था मैं घर में बताऊंगी फैमिली में तो मुझे खुद डांटी देंगे, तो मैंने बताया नहीं। फिर धीरे धीरे तो अपने पूरा बंद होते चला गया, कहीं बाहर जाना, चाइनीज खाना, वो सब मैंने कुछ भी नहीं। वो बंद होने के, जैसे किसी सामने बात करना हो तो मैं नहीं करती। मम्मी को उतना जानकारी नहीं था कि कहाँ पे जाने का। मैं बहुत रो रही थी क्योंकि मैं इतना प्रिपेयर नहीं थी ऑपरेशन के लिए। घर के हालात उनके अच्छे नहीं थे, पर मम्मी लोग ने भी यहाँ वहाँ से किया, फिर वाचा से भी हेल्प मिला पैसे का, तो मेरा ऑपरेशन के लिए पैसा उन्होंने जमा कर दिया। तो ऑपरेशन होने के बाद थोड़ा तो है कॉन्फिडेंस है लोगों के साथ बात करने का, और बाहर कहीं पे जाती हूँ तो मैं खाती हूँ सामान, और जैसे फ्रेंड लोग के साथ में अगर वो लोग कुछ खाते हैं तो मैं भी वड़ा पाव कुछ भी खा लेती हूँ उन लोग के साथ में, अगर वो लोग अभी बोलते कितना खाती है सनो नीचे आना, ये मेरी सनो है, मतलब इसका नाम सहनाज है लेकिन हम लोग उसको प्यार से सनो बोलते हैं। तो यही है जो अपने जो उसको करना रहता है वो करती है, फैमिली के बारे में भी सोचती है, तो प्रोटेक्ट करती है हमेशा। जो मेरे दीदी के पति थे वो उसे बहुत मतलब मारते थे, शायद से गाली देते थे, ये उसे पसंद नहीं था, तो वो डिवोर्स करना चाहती थी। सबके मन में ये ख्याल आ जाता है डिवोर्स को लेके कि वो बहुत बुरा चीज है, होना ही नहीं चाहिए। तो जरूरी नहीं कि मतलब कि सिर्फ लड़की की वजह से ही हो, लड़की की वजह से भी होता है कुछ, और वो अभी मतलब कि कर रही है, तो मैं बहुत प्राउड फील करती हूँ कि वो अपने बारे में सोच रही है।
वाचा में मैं पिछले 7 सालों से हूँ। मेरी बहन भी है दुर्गा, हम दोनों मतलब वाचा की सबसे पुराने स्टूडेंट है। और इसके बाद अभी मेरी एक छोटी बहन आई है कोमल, वो अभी ज्वाइन किया उसने वाचा। वाचा में जाते हम फ्रेंड्स मिलके बहुत अच्छे से खेलते हैं, बहुत मस्ती करते हैं। साथ में हमने लड़कियों के लिए आवाज पे उठाती रैली निकाला, स्ट्रीट पे किया, एरिया में जा जाके किसी के सामने डरना नहीं, बात करने का एक्सपीरियंस, ये सब मैंने सीखा है। मेरी लड़कियां जल्दी बाहर निकलती नहीं, अगर निकलती है तो बाइसेंस बहुत कम निकलती है, और फिर उन्हें ज्यादातर बॉयज के बीच में जाना अलाउड नहीं रहता है। अगर खुली जगह है तो भी वहाँ उनको जाने में डर लगता है, एक बार वो मन करता है जाने में लेकिन डर लगता है। हमने एक फोटोग्राफी की थी जहाँ पे बस्ती अनसेफ जगह बॉयज रहते हैं, जगह खुली है जहाँ पे कोई रहता नहीं है। उन फोटो का हमने एक एग्जीबिशन रखा था, वहाँ पे मतलब बहुत लोग आए थे, टीचर्स सर आए थे, स्टूडेंट आए थे, उनको भी अच्छा लगा कि हमें भी अपना ऐसा करना चाहिए अपने एरिया में, कि मालूम करना चाहिए कि कौन सी जगह अनसेफ है कौन सी नहीं है। एक मैम थे न्यूज रिपोर्टर, उन्होंने मतलब एक न्यूज में डाला था फोटो हमारे बस्ती का, इसकी वजह से एक झगड़ा हुआ था बहुत बड़ा, जो बाथरूम के पास है वहाँ पे से पहुंच गए, हमने मतलब वहाँ का एक फोटो लिया गया था। एक मतलब पेरेंट्स से उनका बेटा है, उनका एक फोटो आया था, तो हमारे घर पे आके हमसे झगड़ा करने लगे, लेकिन हमारा ये मुद्दा नहीं था कि उनके बेटे को फोकस करना था, हमारा तो ये था जो जगह अनसेफ है लड़कियां चाहती नहीं, हमने वहाँ का फोटो लिया था। उनको इतना समझाया तो भी नहीं, तो हमारे गली के लोगों ने, कुछ लोगों ने हमारा सपोर्ट किया, और हमारे पेरेंट्स ने हमारा सपोर्ट किया। वाचा की कुछ लड़कियां थी उन्होंने सपोर्ट किया था। बाइक्स एक हफ्ते तक तो बंद थी, और वहाँ पे बॉयज भी नहीं देते थे नॉर्मली, जिसकी वजह से अभी तो जो वॉशरूम जाते हैं तो आराम से जाते हैं, किसी को प्रॉब्लम नहीं होता।
Vacha, in many Indian languages, means to speak or to express. At Vacha, adolescent girls gain the skills, knowledge, and opportunities to voice and empower themselves and, in turn, their communities. Vacha's various projects are implemented across 16 underprivileged communities or bastis and more than 40 schools and 12 colleges in the districts of Mumbai, Thane, and Valsad in South Gujarat. The first step towards empowerment is the creation of safe spaces of learning where girls are taught life skills like English literacy, computers and internet use, photography, drawing, and so on. Originally a resource center where women could share and discuss their experiences, Vacha today is involved in the documentation of women's histories, production of films and music, and publication of books on gender and health. We believe this is vital in order that girls' experiences enter the public sphere and influence government policies. At Vacha, we also undertake programs for self and general awareness. This involves exposure visits to police stations, railway stations, or local health centers so that the girls understand their rights and develop skills for working in public for themselves and their communities. Our aim through these programs is to empower girls and sensitize boys so that together they have a better chance to develop into adults who value equality and become productive citizens.
Thank you so much for the video, ma'am. It was a really insightful and empowering video in itself. Now, I would like to open the floor for the questions from the participants. Once again, you can either use the raise hand feature or put your questions in the Q&A box. Now, my first question is from Arun sir. So,
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for a very, very inspiring report of your work and a very, very insightful strategy that you are living. I have two questions. Number one, in as much as this is a course on ending gender-based violence, to what extent does the empowerment and the fight for structural justice for women translate into reduction of violence? That's one question. The second is, how far have you been successful or attempting to replicate what you're doing in other parts of India? That's the second question.
So to answer your first question is, in terms of natal violence, the girls start questioning first the discrimination at home, like sharing right from the sharing of the food, that it is, I mean, the girls should also get an equal portion of the food. Second one is also why my brother is not doing, why I am only asking, I have been only expected to do certain kind of work. They are also, there is a domestic violence at home. So father are beating her mother. Girls are talking to their mothers, and they sometimes, of course, take our help from us, and also go and takes mother to file the FIR or complaint against his father. All this takes time. There is always, we also have to continuously with them, that yes, don't worry, we are with you, but you go ahead. Sometimes it's simple, like there was one girl and she said, Didi, after some time, after 10th, I will not be able to study. So we said, why? No, my father will not allow. So then we said, okay, did you ask him? तो बोली नहीं, पापा से तो हम बात ही नहीं करते. So from there it starts, and then we said, okay, just you ask once, and then she asked, and the father, of course, she was in that sense, I would say, she did not have to struggle much, and father said, if you want to study, you can study further. But the thing is, there was a block also at the same time, was a block in the mind that girls cannot talk to the father, and how can we ask these kind of questions? So first they feel, okay, there is certain things we should first ask, and then if they say no, then what would be the next step? So it's very, very long process. They have questioned the kind of abuse by their own father, sexual abuse by their own father and brother. Here the mother have a very important role, critical role to play, and we have been success to almost, I would say, 80%, but there are 20%. Sometimes we also have to put girls decide to go to the shelter home also. Sometimes if there is no option available, they decide to go to the shelter home. There are that have been one or two cases only, but otherwise they will go to their relatives' house, or they will try to find out the support system in their own family, or take help of their brothers, and that's where their brothers help. Working with brothers, really, really impactful. We do work with fathers, but they don't come for the meeting. Very few fathers come for it. And then we have seen that how that after 5 years, 6 years, we see that kind of changes. It's not, doesn't happen in 1 year, 2 year things. In 1 year, 2 years, they are just able to learn the skills and knowledge or acquire knowledge. But these questions they start questioning afterwards. In one of the Muslim communities where girls were, earlier parents were telling us, you don't you tell our daughters that when they come out of the Vacha class, they shouldn't be coming with smile on their face or with a louder laughter. So otherwise, the Maulana will stop these classes. They may not allow them to go to attend these classes. And the same community, after 10 years, the Maulana is telling them, we want many more Sabha to be like in our community. So those kind of things happens. But yes, it's time consuming. Your second question was about, I just forgot your second question. Can you just please repeat?
Replicability.
Yes, replicability. So we started with 2 communities in Mumbai and expanded in 16, 17 communities in last 10 years. Looking at our team strength and everything, we have not expanded to other states. 2 years back, we were doing in Gujarat, South Gujarat, where we had some kind of friends and well-wishers staying there and who were part of our programs. So in South Gujarat, we have replicated that model. But now we have got our own modules, and we are in a position to train the staff. If any organization is ready to implement this kind of program, we do have got a documented module and also the content for training of the staff. And that is why we also train NGO.
Mentoring of 7 NGOs of the underprivileged.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, the learning community network is one of the example where that learning community is a network of the organization who are working with the adolescents. And Vacha have been mentoring them to run the girl-centered and girls-led program in their own organizations. Another is also with there is called the Dalit Muslim Adivasi community. That cohort of organization also we are training them on processes and the organizational processes plus the gender component for their programs. Those 5 organizations we have been training. So that's through that we are replicating our actually model.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to the next question. Ma'am, we have a question in the chat box.
Okay.
No, that's not a, I guess.
Siddhi Kadam. Yeah. Siddhi Kadam, can you unmute and speak? Yeah.
Hi. So it is actually a question, but I also wanted to tell Yagna that I have met her during these Friday meetings that Vacha does. And it's such a delight to hear you today. It was a brilliant presentation. So I was working in the Manan project and I worked with Marol Pipeline and Ram Mandir, and I also worked with Asalsa. So specifically, this is a case study like what I noticed in Marol Pipeline was that there was this idea that, oh, the girls were coming for English classes and they were brilliant. But after like a point of time, I noticed that some girls who lived far away from that, from the Buddha Vihar where the classes happened, the resource center, they would not carry their water bottles or something. And once they forgot, and another girl, she's in 2nd grade. So I'm not like trying to pin something at her. But intrinsically, she was just like, I'm not going to give them water. And she gave water in the cap of a bottle. Like, छोटू सा cap था, उसमें पानी ऐसे क्या एक घूंट भी नहीं होगा. And then the girls came to me and I gave them water from my water bottle. And I was wondering that, you know, how Vacha would tackle a situation like this. Because something like this would happen in the ground. And I mean, I could notice that it was a relentless safe space for the girls. And at that point, when I was interning, they were also working with boys. And that was also a relentless safe space for both of them. So I'm wondering how casteism can be tackled on ground.
Yes. So these are very, very ingrained things among the girls. So through twinning activities, and that is why this, whenever such example happens, at that time, something we observe and then we try to have a sessions on various activities or some sharing of foods that we also try to have our own. We try to keep a water facility in the centers. But talking about this casteism and that things, I would say through various sessions and talks and small practices. Sometimes they just have to share a food. They come whenever they go for the visit. We take them for educational visit. The girls also bring some foods from their home and something we give them. So we encourage them to share foods among themselves. And then talking about how casting happens, how discrimination happen at certain levels and in what forms. But this takes time and Vacha try to address as and when those things happen. in our work, we have seen more of a linguistic barriers rather than the other things. You know, the English, Hindi, Marathi speaking children doesn't go well along with each others. And then one group comes, the other one moves away. So that also sometimes first we work with them separately, then bring them together. Twinning, a lot of twinning exercise, sharing of what is a good about certain state, what is a good thing about maybe in terms of food or clothes, and what is limitation for each states or each kind of religion or those. So those kind of discussions we have regularly in our communities and with our team also, because it's not that team will be well informed. Continuously we need to have a capacity building program of our team to talk about these issues.
Thank you so much.
One, we had in our team, there was one person who was coming and she was fasting during Navratri, and then she was walking barefoot in the community. So what kind of messages we are taking to our girls? So we had to tell her that either you take a leave for so many days or you will have to get away with this practice, because we are talking to them about not getting into this kind of stereotypical practices. And then if the person is doing, then it is difficult.
This is such a great point. I'm so glad I asked this question. That was answered very well. In fact, this part about capacity building the team is so important. And to like intervene when they sometimes kind of perpetuate these, I don't know, caste or any other different marginal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Acha, the training module of Vacha, Dr. Garima is asking whether is it in public domain. Can you share the training module?
We have not yet put it into the public domain as such, but we will be soon putting it.
Yeah, it is under process. Yeah, the publication is under process.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the brief about the working of Vacha. It was a very empowering and an insightful session, and even the question and answer round was quite empowering. Moving on forward with the second session of the day, I would like to invite a second speaker for the session, Dr. Indira Chakravarty, Public Health Researcher, Guest Faculty, Public Health Program, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Delhi. She will present her talk on campaign against pre-birth elimination of girls. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Yeah, so can you give me share screen facility, please?
Yeah.
Right, so that's visible. Shall I start, Professor Vibhuti? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you can also go full screen. It's
Yeah, I'll
you.
do that, yeah. So I thank you very much. Thanks to IMPRI and the organizers of this course for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to, also learn about, the amount of work that has been done. And, I mean, I have myself been an activist at times, I think often as women, many of us actually don't have a choice. We have to jump into the field, the kind of violence that we've been seeing in recent times. So I'm really thankful, and special thanks to Vibhuti. We keep exchanging a lot of information on our WhatsApp. Yeah. Now, I've been listening to some of the earlier sessions. I just had a quick look. And I just want to say that my presentation is really about something which, of course, Professor Vibhuti has been very much a part of. She's very familiar with, but still, I would like to just specifically mention that my presentation is going to take us all into a very different kind of territory, um, where it's not even actually recognized as violence against women. What I'm trying to I'll be talking about. In fact, it started off and it continues to be presented as a solution to the violence against women, as something that will actually enhance the status of women. And so it's not even perceived as violence actually in our society, and except by, of course, those of us on the margins. It's a very sanitized form of violence, and something that has been practiced now for almost 4 decades, almost half a century. If we look at it, if we look at what has been happening since the 1970s, right? I don't know how many of our participants here are aware of the genesis of the slogan itself, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, right? Why this idea of Beti Bachao? Where does it come from? These are all probably, many of you may know it, but when I teach, many of my younger students who are, 22, 23 years old, they have no idea, why Beti Bachao? Where does it come from, right? So it's actually quite a big, vast topic. And because of the time constraints, I've just, I'll present a few topics, and I hope I will be provocative enough and we'll have a good discussion. And Professor Vibhuti herself, I see her actually as a co-presenter in this because of her immense contributions to what I will be touching upon. Right. So I've broadly organized my presentation.
Can you, excuse me, can you make it, it is in working mode, can you make it in a full screen, because the font size is small.
Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. See, actually, when I put it, yeah, I'll do that. Is it better now?
Yeah, but if you can make it full screen, no, that would be good. Go to slideshow. Yeah, fine. Now it is fine. Yes.
Yeah, I have put it in slide mode. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So the few points I have listed here. So what I mean, this is the order in which I wish to cover. My presentation is organized, and the points I will cover. So I will begin with the campaign for the enactment of these two important acts, legislations, the PNDT Act, the Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act, which was followed by the enactment of the PCPNDT Act, the Preconception Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Prohibition of Sex Selection Act. So I'll just touch upon the background for these. I will then quickly look at the implementation of the Act and what is their current status. A quick look at the role of the medical profession and technology manufacturers. Then about a little bit about what is quite popular, very popular I found. In fact, I was trying, while organizing this presentation, I realized we need to update a lot. So this whole availability of pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, I mean, the whole rise of what is called the assisted reproduction industry, the reality of quote unquote designer babies now, and all placed in a highly lucrative assisted reproduction industry, which is transnational, but much more so in India. And then I try to raise some of the issues of challenging the challenges of regulating the medical profession, the challenges of regulating a medical technology in the overall context of healthcare we have in India, a very highly privatized, commercialized, corporatized healthcare ecosystem we have in India, within which we place this assisted reproduction industry, right? And I would like to end with, actually sharing my thoughts about, will framing it as, the whole political economy of reproduction in this country. Even in other parts, of course, the focus is on India. Will that help us move forward, from where we have come in the past 3 decades or so? So a quick timeline of the key events, as I mentioned, for regulation of these 3 technologies that we have. Amniocentesis, it began with amniocentesis, ultrasonography, and then PGD, as I mentioned. The whole attempts and the legislation to prohibit the non-medical use of these medical technologies for sex determination, followed by what is known as sex-selective abortions, right? So we began with using either amniocentesis or ultrasonography to determine the sex of the fetus of the unborn child. Pregnant women undergoing ultrasonography, now it has become extremely common, and it has become almost compulsory medical procedure almost, right? But in the early days itself, there was also, how all this came about is really, beyond the scope of my presentation, but it also started getting to be used to determine, to look at the sex of the unborn child, and very devious-minded medical professionals then conveying it to the women and their families, and also, offering the option of abortion. And so we have this whole practice of what is known as sex-selective abortions. Subsequently, of course, we also have this pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, where, in vitro fertilization procedures, in assisted reproduction procedures, the embryo is, like amniocentesis and ultrasonography, the embryo here is, investigated for any genetic abnormality. Those, in fact, these procedures, the medical use of these procedures has been to detect abnormalities in the unborn child. And that is why here we say they have become very popular for a non-medical use for sex determination and sex selection. Of course, where the embryo, if it is female, then again, it will not be implanted at all. So these are the kind of procedures. So the regulation has been about regulation of these technologies to prohibit their non-medical use. This is important to understand. Now, quite a bit of this presentation is from a witness seminar that some of us conducted in 2018 in Bombay. It was part of another big study we were doing on the private healthcare sector in India. So, and Professor Vibhuti was one of the participants, in that seminar, as having been actively participated in identifying this problem, this practice that was happening, and as a very active member in all the campaigns and the struggles that women's groups took up, right? So this is based on that witness seminar report. I had sent it earlier, and it makes for extremely interesting reading, because the people who participated, who were present at that time and who were engaged in framing it as a social issue, and the kind of problems that they faced and what were the solutions open to them, it gives very good insights, and it is first-hand information. Right. I mean, summarizing the report itself will take a very long time, so I've just put very quick points here, the timelines. So 1970s, mid to late 1970s is when, to 80s is the period, almost a decade of activities in Maharashtra, a decade of documentation and campaigns by women's groups joined by doctors and other progressive activists, campaigns to simply first highlight the practice of sex determination and sex selective abortions across Maharashtra, particularly in Pune, in Mumbai, in Pune, also in states in nearby Gujarat. Professor Vibhuti's whole experience, she has shared very eloquently in the beginning of that witness seminar report about how she stumbled upon it in Gujarat, the practice in Gujarat. One was to frame it as a social problem itself, the kind of struggles that the women's groups and activists went through. It's interesting that there was actually a lot of support for sex selective abortions from various quarters at that period. So the witness seminar report gives the references and also the arguments justifying, or at least not opposed to sex selective abortion, not seeing sex selective abortion itself as a problem, selective abortion, selective elimination of the unborn female child, that is the simplest way of conveying it. The supporters were medical professionals themselves and also well-known public intellectuals of that time, several women academics, several other writers who would qualify to be social influencers of this era, of the internet era. So influencers of that period who were who did not consider sex selective abortions and this kind of selective elimination as an issue at all. On the contrary, they argued that the pre-birth elimination of the female child may actually over a period lead to improvements in the status of women. Right, scarce women might mean more respect for women and better status and better empowerment. And I would really request you all to read some of those arguments. There is a very rich documentation and analysis of the debates, of the public discourse that happened in that period. Right. Nevertheless, the government, the Maharashtra government, did agree to take steps. It took note of it, and again, very sustained efforts by people like Vibhuti and one Dr. Ravindra, who also shared his experiences, and several others. The whole forum against sex determination was formed, which those details are there. So in 1988, Maharashtra became the first state to actually frame, to enact a legislation. The problems they faced in the legislative assembly, where there was opposition from the doctors, needs to be noted, right? So the doctors' lobby was quite a strong lobby opposing any kind of regulation of this practice. We'll come back to some of these points later on. Anyway, the point is, this problem was not restricted to Maharashtra itself. It was a fairly widespread phenomena, and particularly widespread in the northern states, particularly Punjab and Haryana. Punjab especially at that time. And I mean, because these activists were based in Bombay and Maharashtra, they could, I mean, it should not be construed that it was not happening in other parts of the country, right? So again, it's interesting how it came into the national limelight also when the pregnant wife of a bureaucrat underwent an abortion, and it was discovered that it was actually a male fetus. Right. So, the test went wrong, and, he lost his male child, and he then made it into an issue, a bureaucrat from Punjab. And it was brought to the attention of the parliament. And I mean, what had been going on for almost a decade, more than a decade, then, came into the mainstream, and the government was then forced to acknowledge it, to take cognizance. And it is so a lot of activities then at the national level also. And in 1994, then we have the enactment of the of a central act. The union government passed this act, the Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act, it was called, in 1994. It took quite some time to get implemented. In fact, till 2000, for almost half a decade, it was not being implemented. So again, a prolonged struggle by the activists. They had to go to Supreme Court, and ultimately, the 2001 census, which probably provided another momentum to enforce the act seriously. When the sex ratio at birth, the number of female children being born against 1,000 males, the sex ratio at birth, which is a demographic indicator, had fallen drastically. So several reports, the census data published it, and the government was compelled then to make rules and take the implementation of the act seriously. The act was also amended to also include prohibition of sex selection, because by 2000 it was also recognized that because pre-implantation, I mean, the selection of the fetus itself was becoming possible because of the available technologies. And so the act was amended. So we now, as I said, therefore now we have this act, the PCPNDT Act as we call it, which prohibits the use of ultrasonography and PGD for sex determination or for sex selection. From the viewpoint of, I mean, the social view, largely the dominant social view still is that this does not constitute violence. The coming in of the medical profession and the fact that it is quote unquote a medical technology and it is a procedure that is conducted by doctors has somehow, as I said, has enabled the sanitization of this kind of violence, where even though it is a non-medical use, it has to still be performed by doctors, and in practice, it means not letting the female child be born at all. Either after sex determination or by not carrying forward the female embryo through to pregnancy and letting the female child be born. And I mean, it is from there where the topic that was suggested to me, the whole issue of sex selection and pre-birth elimination of the girl child comes about, which is still not considered as a form of violence in our country. And we'll see how it has actually got framed as an issue of freedom and choice for women. Right. Now, during the debates itself that I covered quickly now, more than a decade of sustained work and campaigns, it is not that there were not very many concerns. The activists themselves who were raising it has to first educate themselves about these technologies. I remember Vibhuti saying that we could not even pronounce ICSI properly. We didn't know what it was. So, I mean, this is to just give an idea of how much work went into understanding this kind of, shift that had happened in our society, right? It is not that the female child has not been eliminated before. I think you may have already done it in your course. Infanticide, female infanticide has been practiced, had been practiced, but why this is important is, it's really I mean, it's we all need to debate it. We have had our debates, but it is for the participants also to understand. And the concerns during the discussions, there was a range of concerns, because by then we didn't have a medical, we know in the 1970s itself, abortion had become an issue of women's rights, and the right to be able to decide about when to have their children. The concern was that, by raising the issue of sex-selective abortions, would it become an anti-abortion issue? Could the legislation take an anti-abortion turn? Because there were groups, the pro-lifers, who there still are, who for whom anyway abortion is, is a no-go area, and there are, we know, the issues around resistance to abortion. There were concerns that, by asking for legislation, would it lead to the women who go in for sex determination, could they end up getting penalized? How, what kind of a law do we make? Then larger concern about how the law would be implemented itself, because this was a law that was trying to regulate a medical practice, something which was in the hands of medical professionals. And who will complain against doctors? What will be the rules? How will it be practically implemented? There were a lot of discussions that the activists had while trying to understand the issue. There were concerns about multiple regulations, even for medical practice and medical technology itself. There were debates about whether the law would bring about any change, or, should one focus more on social measures, on changing social attitudes and practice. These were all the debates that these activists were having, very rich debates, which remain very relevant, which are probably even more relevant now, I feel. And we probably need to revisit, as one of the recommendations I'm already saying, we need to get the younger people acquainted with these debates, and maybe we need to revisit them also. And the last issue which was also raised was about the issue of the changes that were happening in the economic sphere in India in the 1990s, policies of privatization and liberalization. So there were concerns whether the government would, how seriously would it implement, since there was the shift to policies of liberalization and privatization, what would that mean for the growth of this industry and for stopping this practice? So there were a lot of serious debates and issues. Another set of issues that emerged from those discussions, the witness seminar and the other activists who were involved, whom we could not call but who have written about it, and the participants, and Professor Vibhuti, familiarized, informed us of all the other activists and their concerns. Overall, what emerged very clearly was that in that period, in the 1970s onwards, the whole issue of reproduction and the female body, in a sense, had got entangled with the interests of our government, of the Indian government, in population control and family planning. Right. So that's an interesting piece of information about why abortion laws in one gynecologist who was a participant, he shared with us about, the sterilization campaigns he was part of, and the whole liberal attitude of the government even towards abortion, as that is one way of population control, and liberalizing our NTP law, where the decision was left to the doctor, where failure of contraception is one reason, is one indication based on that indication, doctors can conduct abortions. And that was seen as arising from the concerns, the demographic concerns of the state. Then the other important issue that emerged was that the whole procedure of amniocentesis actually was being experimented in AIIMS in Delhi in 1974, and that's how it emerged actually. The researchers found that a lot of couples who were opting for amniocentesis actually wanted to know the sex of their child. That's how the whole thing also spilled out, and when the doctors shared this concern. Now, the government, the concern was that it should be completely, no health provider should be allowed to offer this kind of a service, but the government simply prohibited its use in government health facilities at that time, but it permitted the use of these technologies such as amniocentesis in the private sector. And the private sector since then, has always and since then has developed very deep commercial economic interests, the private healthcare sector I'm talking about. Then the other thing that emerged was about the medical profession itself being involved, will be part of the enforcement of the law, which was a problematic area, but the activists were, it was not very clear. This was a procedure which the medical professionals were going to conduct, and how would they themselves, how effectively would they themselves enforce this law, then there were a lot of differences within the medical profession which continue to this day, because ultrasonography is seen as a imaging modality to be performed only by radiologists, but then by then a lot of obstetricians and gynecologists actually had started using it large scale for ultrasonography of pregnant women to detect abnormalities and to see how, so those differences emerged, and the impact of that on the enforcement and the overall experience of the medical profession with other regulations. So there was one of the reasons why the medical profession was resistant was that the other regulations, in the enforcement of the other laws to set up hospitals and to do their practice, they faced a lot of harassment and corruption. And so there was a lot of skepticism and even resistance, apart from other arguments which I will come to later. Anyway, so to move on further, so the whole chapter on the legislation, which took nearly 2 decades, the fact that it is a social problem which is affecting sex ratios at birth, the scale at which it was conducted, the sex ratio was somewhere around, varied from about 700 girl child being born to 1,000 male, males being born. That was the kind of ratios, 700 in some states, 800, 900, and so on. It was very clear. The census data and other data had started showing it. So we now have almost 3 decades of implementation of a law, and what is the status of its implementation and enforcement. Now, as we see, it has to be implemented on 2 fronts. One is to prohibit use of USG for sex determination. So what the act says is that fine, pregnant women need ultrasonography, the clinics, yeah, the facilities will have to only register. Sorry, can I continue? Yeah. Okay. So only registered healthcare facilities, only registered institutions will be permitted to have an ultrasonography, to do an ultrasonography. While the doctor may do the ultrasonography, they should not communicate the sex of the fetus to the pregnant woman or her family in any way. Right. This is the core of the act. So it is not the USG itself cannot be prohibited, right? It's a medical practice, a medical procedure. The act says you will not communicate the sex of the fetus, right? And radiologists actually share that, while they are doing it, they do get to see the sex of the fetus. And if that gets captured in the film, or on their screen, that has been used to, accuse them of sex determination. Some of the radiologists have complained. So this is the practical difficulty. Right. So there are a lot of difficulties in enforcement. Now, studies subsequently have shown that doctors and their other co-workers, their assistants, have always found ways to convey the gender through using various codes. It's just that it is not written on a paper. No doctor ever wrote on a paper that you have a female fetus or a male fetus. And it's available as to how, they would either say, oh, okay, your child is going to be a good football player, assuming that only boys play football or whatever. So that documentation is available. And activists, and in fact, the government machinery itself started relying on, sending pregnant women as decoy customers, right? And where the woman carries recording equipment and asks about the sex of the fetus, and if the doctor conveys it, then that is used to convict the doctor under the law. But this also has been very problematic, as some activists shared with us, especially traveling to remote areas, to remote towns. And this got complicated by the fact that portable ultrasound machines started to be manufactured by companies like GE. Actually, that is one part again that I've just mentioned, how the medical equipment manufacturers also, exploited this kind of a situation. It is documented as to how they sold ultrasonography machines even to unregistered clinics, and they were very aware of what was happening. Anyway, so currently, if you see news reports indicating, and very recent, even as recent as last month, I was reading about how in Haryana, in Mysore, in several states, sex determination rackets exist. So there are middlemen, there are doctors who know where to go, what to do, and medical professionals, the medical community also is aware of who does these. It may have reduced. It's acknowledged that this kind of sex determination and sex selective abortion may have reduced, but it has not stopped completely. And officials themselves actually admit that the sex ratio has worsened since even with the law. I mean, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Even though we have a law, the impact is not as much as was expected, right? These are some figures I have quickly put here. This is, I have shared the source, but we still, compared to other countries, we still have this figure is showing it the other way. So it says 110 boys being born for every 100 girls, which is slightly above what would be the natural ratio if there was no such intervention. We have some NFHS data which also show that the sex ratio at birth is still in favor of the male child. Now, overall, I mean, this is again a very big area. I am not getting into it. But available data shows that we are still, 2019 NFHS data shows that the sex ratio at birth is still 913 girls being born to 1,000 boys being born. Now, it varies across states. This is a national figure. Even in states like the southern states, which are considered to be better, it is over 900, but there are states where it is still around 800. Punjab, Haryana being very notorious, even states like Jharkhand. So what is found is that overall the son preference remains, especially what the data shows is that if the first child is a female, then the second and the third child, it is much more masculine. The ratio is much more masculine, and the son preference remains. So I want to just wind this up. How much? I think I don't have much time. I was not timing myself. Do I have a few minutes? Vibhuti ji? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
My apologies for speaking
Yeah.
very fast, but I wanted to, come to the important issues, right? Yeah. So now, as I said, since 2000, even if we consider that we've had about 2 decades of implementation of this act, along with a lot of social measures also. I think it would be unjust to say that we had just the law. It's because of the efforts of women's groups that a lot of other activities also have been initiated by the government in the social sphere also to improve status of women, to improve status of the girl child. A lot of other initiatives were being taken. Now, overall, the point is, has the sex ratio at birth improved? More important, has the status of women improved? Has the violence against women ended? These were the kind of arguments that supporters of the proponents of sex determination had argued in the 1980s and the 1990s, right? I think it would be good to go back and have this debate with them. And how do we see I think you have already been discussing in the past, in the earlier sessions, about how sexual violence against women has actually increased manifold, right? And very brutal kind of, very horrific kind of sexual violence, which horrifies, scares us also. I personally, those of us who have been part of the women's movement. So, what has been the impact of not just the law, but also a whole lot of social initiatives? How do we understand the increase in violence against women? How do we look at this impact of this whole Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, right? बेटी बचाने के लिए ये पूरा रेगुलेशन जो लाया गया, the whole effort to say don't eliminate the girl child. That is what Beti Bachao literally means, bachao usko, don't kill the female child, Beti Padhao. What has been the impact of all this is something you're all discussing. If things had improved, probably we wouldn't have be talking about ending gender-based violence today. The discussion should have been about something else. Personally, I feel. But there's no doubting the fact that violence has only increased, right? Rather than improve. If the status had improved, there should be no violence, right? Now, the last point an important point which I wish to highlight, right? I wish to highlight some of the other issues that were discussed in the 80s during the campaigns, right? Which we need to also, I feel, give as much attention to. We have limited resources, and it was acknowledged that we couldn't do it, but it probably needs to be done. So how do we look beyond the whole legal regulation to look at the challenges of regulating, of examining technology, medicine, business, and state, right? All these actors, what kind of roles they play, what kind of values do they have, and what does it do? What has it done to this kind of violence against women, this kind of very sanitized form of violence against women? And when I say political economy, I mean, is there a convergence of interests among these different groups in society? And then if it is so, then how do we address it? So, I feel this kind of captures it, this very interesting observation by Arundhati Roy about how India lives in several centuries at the same time, right? I feel this really captures how technology and other interests and those who deployed technology, technology is seen as progress, right? So if technology is progress, and if technology is being used to to uphold the patriarchal ideas of women as inferior, or of even eliminating women, is it not then progress and regress going together? And that is why I feel, so India living in centuries at the same time. Why do I say this? So this is where then I wish to highlight the issues around about how the medical profession itself uh, um, has been a key player in actually promoting the technology. Right now, it is very, very important to not to lose sight of this fact. Right, this is totally unlike earlier we have read about how dyes were quietly told to just muffle the female child, right, after delivery, or take the female child away from the house. Right. In fact, even during the witness seminar, one of our participants from Pune, she told us about how in a hospital there, the nurses were actually told to drown the female child after birth in a bucket of water, and the nurses were completely agonized over it and shared their experiences. Right now, that was something from very visible murder. The shift from that to this um, has been completely enabled by very highly educated, highly respected members of our society, along with the equipment manufacturers also. Right? In fact, during the Supreme Court PIL, even the equipment manufacturers were made a party. They had to report to the government about to who all they were selling the equipment. And there's quite a lot of information on, I mean, even the Wall Street Journal carried an article on how GE had completely exploited the situation and increased its sales of the ultrasonography machine, selling portable machines, laptop machines which could be carried anywhere and could be used. And there you don't even have a record there, right? And that is how the whole connivance of interests happening. So the point being that all these technologies for prenatal genetic testing, for fetal ultrasonographic imaging, and even, of course, for assisted reproduction and PGT, they require highly qualified, highly trained medical professionals, a lot of medical infrastructure, staff, and very expensive equipment, right? And the kind of prenatal sex determination followed by abortion again, medical abortion that happened in India of female fetuses that happened would not have been possible without the participation and the knowledge of the medical professionals themselves, right? And so we need to be very clear about how large sections of medical professionals, I mean, this is not to paint the entire medical professionals black. After all, there were sections of medical professionals who did, who did do the studies, who did come out and say that, yes, this is happening, right? And the problems that they were facing. Still, the dominant values, the dominant patriarchal values permeate the medical profession also, and their argument was that they were actually helping couples to plan their families. That is where the population control ideology came into the picture, that it was fair enough that couples want only 2 children, and a female child is a social burden because of dowry, etc., etc. And so they were actually helping couples to plan their family, to save their expenses, and they were actually doing social work by one, controlling population by doing these abortions, and also in enforcing the 2-child norm, either one beta beti or 2 sons preferably, so that all that is documented. So a very sorry and very distressing picture of how sections of the medical profession in India exploited the regressive social values of patriarchy, as well as the commercial gains, the lure of the lucrative gains, the kind of profits that they made, again, also cannot be ignored. That is why I talked about how very privatized, commercialized healthcare sector also enabled this, the policy of the government to leave it in the private sector and only prohibiting government hospitals. How all this came together, and the commercial gains, the patriarchal social values, the skills that were required, all of which were present in the medical profession. They actively enabled, encouraged, and promoted the use of ultrasonography for the non-medical purpose of sex determination, and followed by sex-selective abortion. So, I mean, as many researchers, and we have all documented it, so doctors, in a sense, doctors have been instrumental in enabling this shift from the earlier practice of female infanticide to a very medically sanitized ways of ensuring the birth of a son, in the process reinforcing patriarchal values and gender discrimination. So the whole meaning of this medical technology for people as a sex test, right? If you look at the language at that time, it got to be known as a sex test. That was possible only because of how the medical professionals performed it and explained it to them. If not directly, then through their middlemen and through other actors in the process, and then also turning a blind eye. The medical profession as well as the state. So, the widespread diffusion of an entirely non-medical, unethical use of a technology, which is considered as progress for upholding regressive values of patriarchy and gender discrimination, right? And a very interesting study, in fact, doctors themselves in their own families practice sex selection and sex determination, right? There's this very interesting study published in 2013 of almost 900 plus families where either one or both members, both parents were physicians. The study is published and it was widely reported in newspapers also nationally and globally, how in these doctor families itself, the child sex ratio was 907 girls per 1,000 boys, much lower than the national average. So doctors themselves practicing in their own families and, opting to have not more than one girl child, or preferably no girl child at all. So, the study is interesting. If there was a daughter in the family, then there was subsequently the chances of having a girl reduced and more male births, so the skewed sex ratios in India. By the way, this study was done by doctors in a medical college. It was not done by women's groups, who are always kind of ridiculed. But this is a study done by doctors in Nagpur. It's available. So that is one form, where they themselves uphold it, practice it in their families, perform it on others, and then also obstructing regulation, obstructing the implementation and the enforcement of the PCP and DT Act. So a lot of pressure from the medical community to not to prosecute the doctors, even if doctors were not doing it themselves, but the whole fraternity coming in and, not informing who was doing it, or overlooking it, how fraternities and, these operate, the whole old boys network and all coming into the picture. And government officials themselves stated that there was pressure from the medical community to not to take action, even when doctors were caught on hidden cameras. So, and then because doctors are also part of the supervisory boards, then the supervisory board itself would also, kind of drag their legs in prosecuting their fellow doctors, right? So the whole issues around the law and the regulation of this kind of a technology. Now, PGD, even assuming that, okay, maybe sex selective abortions is still invasive, right? It is still, it may be a medical procedure, but it is still an invasive procedure. PGD has actually made it far, far simpler to select the sex of the fetus. Now, because a lot of genetic disorders are sex linked, I mean, that is how the technologies were then made, right? To detect genetic abnormalities. Several genetic abnormalities are sex linked, and so you do essentially end up seeing the sex of the embryo itself, right? And in fact, I've put this reference here of a working paper of FOGSI. FOGSI is a very influential association. It is the Federation of Obstetricians and Gynecologists Societies of India. Their working document, a working paper which explains PGD to its members, which explains assisted reproduction. This is a quote I've taken directly, where the doctor says this practice in India is used to select only the male embryos, even though the practice is illegal as per the act, right? So I have listed the references where in recent times it is again, investigative journalism that is telling us that how couples are actually simply using IVF now, right? Because infertility itself has been, made into a medical problem, and then IVF also then enables sex selection. So last 2-3 points, I've already talked about how, we need to probably also engage with the healthcare ecosystem itself in India. It's completely corporatized, highly privatized, corporatized healthcare industry. A lot of financial and business interests now investing in provision of hospital care. Now, within this, it is within this that the assisted reproduction industry, technology industry is embedded. It's a part of this, and how then medically providing assisted reproduction is it's a medical procedure, so it is offered as a solution, as something for women to cope with, but then it brings in a lot of money, and it is also provided the scope for further elimination of the girl child, right? So how medical interests, economic interests, technology is coming together, and yeah, sorry. Now, now the arguments for this are that it has been argued in terms of offering freedom and choice to women, right? So, I mean, for the society as a whole, among other questions, relating to use of technology, I want to just highlight this also. Has it actually removed the burden of childbearing, or has it actually increased the pressure now, the availability of technologies, so infertility actually has become much more of a stigma now for women and for couples who don't have a child, right? And there's immense pressure ki abhi to itna available hai, kar kyun nahi lete, right? And and ab kar hi rahe ho to fir beta hi paida kar lo. Correct. Right, because this involves lakhs of rupees of money and a lot of effort, so is there really freedom to not to have a child at all for women? We have to ask this question. Can we have a different kind of a family? Now, this is offered only to married couples, to married heterogeneous couples. So, to whom is the choice given? Now, this I just mentioned, the overall, the availability of technologies has actually, what we find is, has strengthened the idea of motherhood as some innate quality for women, because it has to be sold. Now, the market needs to be created, and where childbearing and reproduction are shown as fundamental to women. So the choice is, okay, you can postpone having your child because ARTs are available. You can freeze your embryo, you can do this, you can do that. So it is, is the choice, is it a real freedom? Is right. And the last, as I said, the grasping the overall political economy of reproduction in India, right? The state with its agenda, with its objective of population control, family planning, and there are shades of eugenics also if you look at assisted reproduction, right? I mean, the whole idea of investigating the embryo for disability, right? Any disability, Down syndrome, fine, let us not have this child, which is, which is again, the disability activists have their own viewpoints. And so, I mean, in such a context, being a female child itself is a disability then, if you're eliminating this thing. So together now, what are the further challenges, and then how do we move ahead? And the availability of these technologies, has it changed mindsets? Has it changed social values? Is it at least facilitating ending the violence against women? Is a question that I will leave all of us with for discussion. Right. I'll end there, and thank you all once again. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Indira Chakravarty, for such a exhaustive and well-researched presentation. You have captured almost all such a complex and long-drawn debates you have encapsulated within 45 minutes.
I mean, if you can add to it, I'll be really, really, encouraged. If, you feel there's something needs to be emphasized, you're more of an expert here, actually, I genuinely.
No, but you have done so much research, and especially what you did after 2002 is really important, very important.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful session. Ma'am, I would request you, Vibhuti ma'am, to kindly give her remarks for the session.
Yeah, so I think first of all the sociological, anthropological, historical, legal, and medical dimensions have been taken care of by Dr. Indira. Only I would like to emphasize that it is so important for the civil society organizations to respond. I think this is the one campaign which taught us, which brought us out of ivory tower. We were not only addressing the law commission, or we were not addressing the criminal justice system, but whosoever invited, one thing we realized was that we need to change the mindset. And even it complemented what Yagna said, that we have to really work at a community level to change the mindset, which is very important. So our major slogans used to be that eliminate inequality, not women; destroy dowry, not daughters, because these were the arguments given even by the doctors and acclaimed academicians, that if Indian daughters are not required, it is better not to allow them to be born. Or it is a woman's choice. If mother doesn't love her daughter, why should we force her to produce a girl child? Or it is a solution to dowry problem. The kind of advertisements with the diagnostic centers were doing, say spend 5,000 now and save 5 lakhs later. No solution to dowry problem. Now, these are the kind of things they were saying. So it is the whole ideology of victim blaming. When if there is a poverty, we never say that throw bomb in the bastis. No, we say that eliminate poverty, come up with a developmental initiative, come up with the kind of work which Vacha is doing, that even among the poorest of the poor people in Mumbai city, they have empowered these young girls. So I think that is as Yagnaji said, it is a very, very tiring, very, very demanding in terms of energy and emotion. You need to have a tremendous commitment to do that kind of work. But the shortcut is just eliminate daughters. We have heard some bureaucrats working for, at that time we had only one TV channel and Doordarshan. And Doordarshan's gazetted officer telling that I don't want to, I want only one child, but it has to be son. Because once you have a daughter, you are always worried of either sexual exploitation or kidnap, or after marriage, it is dowry problem. And so even person with so much of power talking like that, against that to have a debate, plus the whole debate in EPW for nearly 10 years, when the little girls and deaths in India with the Pranab Bardhan wrote, and then Dharma Kumar also, she pitched in. And and it was the Leela Dubey as an anthropologist, she stood by the campaign that no, this is not a solution. We have to change the mindset of the people. And that is doable. The way social reformers did in the 19th century. We need to have another reform, as I think our previous days resource person, Dr. Keerthi Bollineni said that what we need is the second social reform movement. We need a renaissance that is to fight for the dignity of girl and women. So I think that has been the more, that is the most humane approach, and what Yagnaji also said, that right-based approach is very important. So the ideology of victim blaming by the technodocs, by the academicians, by the public intellectuals, I think that has to be this thing. And I think I always quote Dr. Manmohan Singh Ji when he called the femicide with the use of sex-selective abortion as a national emergency. And he also said, no, in the national meeting for Save the Girl Child, that was in 2008, where he said that only government cannot, it is not only government alone that can address this problem. Though government must be actively mobilizing public opinion in this regard, we need active civil society involvement in the national campaign to save the girl child. So I think this issue is as burning as it was in the 80s and 90s as it is now. Even if we go by the UNFPA data, we don't have a 2021 data, there was no census, but other data of NFHS or even UNFPA data, they are alarming. And some of the pockets where women's groups are active, for example, in Mandya region, in Karnataka, or in Haryana, or all the journalistic articles which are presented to Ladli Media Award, if you read them, the kind of things that are happening, bride bazaars, trafficking of girls and women, when there is a shortage of girls, it doesn't enhance their status. This is not a law of demand and supply as we apply in neoclassical economics. It is the patriarchal control over sexuality, fertility, and labor, which is being used. No, so I think that we need to understand, and that is why addressing the misogyny, addressing the male domination, addressing the patriarchal power, I think that is most important.
Yeah, so quickly, just quick point, I mean, the social reform, I mean, why I emphasized also, a lot of work needs to be done among quote unquote educated elite people also, that is what is emerging very strongly. This impression or this general view that it is only in the rural areas and it is in the villages that the uneducated people are resorting to this is a complete I mean, it's a partial truth. Studies have shown that sex elimination, sex selection, all this is practiced in urban areas among the elite educated people, and PGD is something which only elite wealthy people can afford, right? And we don't have studies. It's very difficult to do any studies, and my personal experience, medical doctors, where the female doctor who delivered my second child, she was quite sure. She said, "Ab to fir 2 saal baad aayenge na." I said, "Why?" She said, "You have 2 daughters. Don't you want to have a son?" This is a female doctor in a very big hospital in Delhi telling me that yes, of course, why don't you want to have a third child? Effectively, these are ways by which the medical profession is promoting this kind of values, and it is not. What Vacha is doing is very good work, but we need to also work with the educated doctors and young people to
Yeah, because they set the standards also. No, so elite always sets the standard,
yeah.
And also the kind of term they are using: birth of a daughter as a sunset and birth of a son as a sunrise. All these things come from the medical lobby. No?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, very good. Both the presentations are brilliant. Very, very mind blowing. So much of food for thought. Both of you came. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your comments and for such an insightful conversation about the same. Moving forward, we would now open the floor for the questions from the participants. Once again, you can either use the raise hand feature or you can put your question in the Q&A box. So,
Hello. Yeah. Shrija Mukherjee.
I would ask the participants if there are any questions.
I suppose it's just too difficult to digest. I suppose.
I know, because so many new.
The way, yeah, you know, I mean, that's how we all started off, you know, to think that.
Yeah, but we have here researchers, gynecologists, lawyers, and scholars working on various many related issues on gender-based violence.
So, ma'am, since there are no questions, this brings us end to our Q&A session also. So, we thank Ms. Yagna Parmar ji and Dr. Indira Chakravarty ji for not only sharing the insightful talk with us, but also patiently answering to all our questions. Thank you, ma'am, and we hope to collaborate with you for further IMPRI events as well. I now request our chair, Vibhuti ma'am, to kindly give the closing remarks for today.
Yeah, so the concluding remarks is that both the issues were related. Today's sessions were focusing on the girl child, and also the question of why it is important that anything which deals with the new reproductive technology or the scientific, because we always got the learning that science is always for the boon, but it can also be bane. That also we have to see if it is in the wrong hands. We have experienced what happened during what the Nazi scientists had done during the Second World War. In fact, the pioneering, the whole genesis of the new reproductive technology lies in the researches done by the Nazi scientists, because new reproductive technology is fundamentally based on the principle of selection and rejection. Who is allowed to survive on this planet? As Dr. Indira ji told us about the designer baby. If you are blonde, you have if you are fair skin, if you have a great IQ like that of Einstein, then you are the super person. And that's what the Hitler talked about. Who is the superior most list? And how Hitler had isolated tall, handsome, intelligent, educated, articulate women just for extensive breeding, because he wanted Germany to be the superpower. And their job was only to get pregnant and produce babies. While on the other hand, there was genocide of the Jewish people, and more than 10 million people, Jewish people were eliminated by them. So I think the same logic, if we don't raise our voice, if we just remain silent spectator, this can happen. In fact, Professor Kalpana Kannabiran calls the sex-selective abortion and quoting Dr. Amartya Kumar Sen's data of 100 million missing women in South Asia. She calls sex-selective abortion and femicide as a patriarchal genocide, which was worse than what the Nazi Germany. The number of girls who have lost their, who were not allowed to be on this earth in South Asia, like especially the 9 South Asian countries where female infanticide is there, and now they are practicing sex-selective abortion. So this is the comparison Kalpana Kannabiran, a renowned sociologist and the legal expert, has made. Thank you. Yeah. Hello.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you all once again, really.
Thank you, ma'am.
I can share all the some of the papers and all. I'll send it to you, and they can be shared with the participants.
Even your document of the
witness seminar report also.
Seminar. Yeah, that can go into the dossier also.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we would like to move on to the formal vote of thanks. So as we come to the end of day 3 of Ending Gender-Based Violence Cohort 3, Challenges and Responses, an online national autumn school program, a 4-week online immersive certificate training course, I, Avi Sharma, researcher at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for the day 3, Ms. Yagna Parmar ji, Director of Vacha Resource Center for Girls at Vacha Charitable Trust, and for the session 2, Dr. Indira Chakravarty ji, Public Health Researcher, Guest Faculty Public Health Program, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Delhi, for taking out their valuable time and for their thought-provoking insights on the topics. We thank our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel-ji, Visiting Distinguished Professor, IMPRI, for convening the session. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared for your learning. We look forward to welcoming you on the 4th day of the certification course, that is on 24th September 2024 at 6 p.m. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you would continue to join us in the future of IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning events. Wishing you all a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks.